The year is 1914. Our unnamed protagonist, a young Englishman, has been on a ship for 67 days, traveling to a remote island in the South Atlantic where he will work as a weather observer for 1 year. On the last day of the journey, while he is smoking by the railing, the captain asks him what he is running away from, because that was the first question he was asked when he decided to go to sea, but the Englishman does not answer. They arrive at the island, and the entire crew helps the Englishman carry his belongings to the cabin where he will stay. He notices that there are no birds around, and the captain points out that there is also no meteorological officer there to welcome them. They enter the cabin, which appears to have been abandoned for a long time, and this makes the captain think it is unsafe. He does not believe the Englishman should stay, but the man refuses. He stays. Although it is not part of his job, the captain helps the Englishman investigate the area. On their way to a lighthouse they have seen in the distance, they find a freshwater spring, and on it, a message written on the stones. Gruner owns this spring. The captain sends his crew back to the ship and continues alone with the Englishman. A moment later, they arrive at the lighthouse, which is rudimentarily fortified. When no one responds to their knocks and calls, they force the door open and climb the stairs, where they find an old man sleeping. This is Gruner, who mutters something about returning to the water before getting out of bed. When the captain asks him about the previous weather observer, Alder Vigeland, whom he is supposed to take back with him, Gruner says that he died of typhus, that one day he simply left and he never saw him again. Since Gruner is of no help, the two men leave. The Englishman still wants to stay, so before returning to his ship, the captain tries to give him his gun. The Englishman refuses it, and after saying goodbye, he goes to his cabin to begin organizing it and setting up his meteorological instruments. In the desk drawer, he finds a diary left behind by his predecessor, so he decides to read it by the fire. The first pages are quite normal, the usual notes about plant and animal life on the island. There is also a photograph of a woman in a wedding dress. On the back it says Mr. Vigeland and love, 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 which makes her the wife of his predecessor. But soon things become strange. There are notes and drawings of bizarre marine creatures that attack humans, as well as an ominous comment: Darwin was wrong. The next day, while taking his meteorological readings on the beach, the Englishman finds circles of stones filled with shells in the sand. The shapes are too precise to be the accidental work of the elements. Later that night, while eating dinner in the cabin, he hears strange noises outside the house, growling and banging on the wooden walls. He slowly approaches the door when, suddenly, a monster's claw appears from underneath it. It matches the drawings he saw in the diaries. Hearing more of them climbing all over the house, he rushes to the basement and closes the door behind him. He spies on what is happening upstairs through a hole in the wood, and when he notices that one of the creatures is looking back at him through the same opening, he stabs it with a knife that he manages to push through the hole. However, they are still outside, so the Englishman decides to tie the doorknob to the stairs and spends the night in the basement. He comes out the next morning, noticing blood on the floor of the house and strange footprints in the sand. He rushes to the lighthouse, but this time he cannot open the door. After calling out to Gruner a couple of times, the old man finally opens a window and throws water at him, refusing to let the Englishman in when he asks. He tells him that he should have stayed on the ship. Moments later, the Englishman is preparing the house for the night. He seals all the windows and surrounds the cabin with a circle of wood and books, which he covers with lamp oil. Once inside, he also seals the door and loads a rifle. The creatures arrive shortly after and jump onto the windows and door, slowly destroying the reinforcements he had put in place earlier. The Englishman manages to shoot a few of them at first, but there are too many. So he lights a torch with a lamp and throws it onto the circle of wood and paper he placed around the house, starting a fire that scares the monsters away, but one that he cannot control. The cabin also catches fire, so the man has no choice but to abandon it, burning his hand in the process, and he spends the night behind some beach rocks and under a rain that begins to fall when he arrives there. He returns to the cabin the next morning, finding it destroyed. After grabbing a handkerchief to wrap his injured hand, he takes the rifle and sneaks off to follow Gruner to the spring. Just as he is about to shoot him, he is attacked by one of the marine creatures, which turns out to be a female wearing a sweater. He pushes her away and points his rifle at her, but Gruner then finds them and points his weapon at the Englishman in turn. However, the Englishman does not give up. He makes Gruner lower his weapon by threatening the creature. Gruner asks him what he wants, and the Englishman says it is obvious. So Gruner finally agrees to let him stay with him in the lighthouse after the Englishman tells him about all the supplies he has to share and explains that the creature is harmless. He proves it by calling her as if she were a dog, and she actually obeys. Before leaving for the cabin, Gruner decides to name the Englishman Friend. When they reach the cabin, they proceed to grab as many supplies as possible. Friend tells Gruner that he believes the previous meteorologist did not die of typhus. He was left alone in the house, and the creatures took him. He thinks that should count as a crime on Gruner's record, but Gruner neither confirms nor denies it. He only tells him that they need to leave, that night is approaching. A few days later, we find Friend sleeping inside the lighthouse, only to be awakened by the creature licking his burned hand. Her saliva has healing properties. Gruner enters the lighthouse and tells him that he has been sleeping for about 2 days. Friend even wet his pants. They go upstairs, and while counting the bullets they have at their disposal, they talk about the creature. Gruner cannot really talk to her, only give her orders. She is like a dog that will always return to its master, no matter how cruel he is. Friend is amazed by her and watches her while talking about the theory of isolated marine creatures that evolved in their own way in order to survive. Gruner does not like this speech, so he interrupts him to take him to the balcony and explain that the creatures hate light, whether artificial or natural. Friend asks why Gruner did not leave with the ship that brought him 4 days earlier, and Gruner responds that if civilization is so beautiful, why did Friend leave it? He prefers to stay here, where he is the master of his own destiny. Friend replies that he can stay if he wants, but he will signal the first ship that passes. Gruner finds the idea ridiculous because they are not on a commercial route. The lighthouse was only built to divert funds. Days pass as Friend tries to restart his life for a second time. While inspecting the lighthouse, he hangs a hammock for himself and finds an old diving suit in a chest. He even begins marking the days on the wall and gets used to interacting in a friendly way with the creature. When night falls, Gruner tells him to grab his rifle and takes him to the balcony, where there are lit torches and the lighthouse lamp shines intensely. Armed from head to toe, Gruner explains to Friend that the creatures are coming and how to attack them. It is important to only shoot when they get close, and knocking down just a couple of them is enough because they will then eat each other. His own creature is on the balcony above them, making loud noises, and Friend wonders if they are not attacking because they want to rescue her. When the monsters finally arrive, Gruner begins attacking them rapidly, but fear overtakes Friend and he retreats inside before fainting. The next morning, Friend is awakened by a very angry Gruner, who tells him that he will not accept any dead weight living with him, no matter how much food and alcohol he brings. He sends him to fetch water, and Friend does exactly as he is told. But when he returns to the lighthouse, he discovers that Gruner has been sleeping with the creature. Later that night, Gruner gives Friend one last chance. He takes him back to the balcony, but this time, when the creatures arrive, he is the one who retreats inside. He closes the door and leaves Friend outside, forcing him to defend himself. The next morning, he opens the door again and finds Friend covered in blood but alive and victorious. From then on, the two men establish a daily routine. Every day, Friend performs minor tasks to earn his stay in the lighthouse, and at night, they defend themselves from the attacks of the creatures. Friend remembers why he came to the island, to find peace in nothingness, but instead, he has found hell. He wonders why the creatures do not attack every night. In fact, 2 whole weeks pass without him seeing them. During his daily searches for firewood, he has also begun collecting whale bones to carve. Friend cannot understand how Gruner can attack these creatures so often and at the same time sleep with one of them. Contact with her cold skin should be disturbing, but he also finds himself befriending the creature and even gives her a name. He calls her Anaris. One night, the two men become so focused on a game of chess that they forget to turn on the lights. They are almost overwhelmed by the creatures when they attack, but they barely manage to survive by locking themselves inside the lighthouse, although Gruner's leg is injured in the process. The next morning, while Anaris heals the wound, Friend points out that they will not be able to survive much longer since they are running out of ammunition before he goes down to the beach. There he finds a necklace in the sand, and right after that, he sees a ship in the distance. He runs back into the lighthouse and returns with a flare gun in his hand, but Gruner does not allow him to fire it. He says that he can protect himself alone, that he has what he wants and does not want more people on the island. As he lunges at Friend to stop him, Anaris arrives and growls at him, forcing him to leave Friend alone. A few days later, Friend hears Gruner shouting and hitting Anaris, who suddenly runs out of the lighthouse. Friend follows her outside, and after placing his rifle against a rock, carefully approaches her to show her the small boat he carved out of whale bone. Anaris recognizes the shape and leads him to a hidden place on the beach where there is an abandoned boat resting in the sand. He returns to the lighthouse and tells Gruner about this, but Gruner already knew. He did not tell Friend because it would have been useless. If he left in the boat, he would die of hunger or be killed by a creature attack. When asked about the origins of the boat, Gruner says it had belonged to a Portuguese man who escaped from a shipwreck and was killed by the monsters. That ship had been smuggling dynamite, which Gruner believes is waterlogged. Friend takes him inside and shows him the diving suit he had found. He believes he can use it to retrieve the sunken dynamite, which could help them exterminate the creatures. Gruner refuses, believing it to be a one-way mission. The next day, Friend decides to work on repairing the boat anyway, distracting himself only when he hears Anaris singing at the spring. Friend takes off his shirt and joins her in the water, all of which is seen by Gruner, who becomes jealous. Later, back in the lighthouse, Gruner throws the diving suit at Friend and tells him that he has changed his mind, an obvious plan to get rid of Friend and keep Anaris for himself. They board the boat and reach the shipwreck area. Friend puts on the diving suit and dives down, where he finds the boxes of dynamite, which he attaches to a rope that Gruner pulls up to the boat. While he is working, two juvenile creatures swim near him and knock him to the ground. Slowly, he begins to run out of air. Friend pulls the rope 3 times, the signal for help, but Gruner deliberately ignores him. So Friend has no choice but to remove the diving suit and swim back to the boat. Once they return to the lighthouse, they open the dynamite crates. One has been soaked, as suspected, but the others are intact. They bury them in 2 lines outside the house, one very close to the walls. Winter arrives and snow begins to fall. A week passes without any creature attacks. One morning in particular, Friend discovers that Gruner spent the night on the balcony with his hand on the dynamite detonator, nearly freezing to death. Friend shakes him and sends him inside, but before following him, he disconnects the detonator wires. 3 more weeks pass without monster attacks. Gruner beats Anaris, believing she has warned her friends, and decides that they need to set a trap. That night, Friend stays by the open door surrounded by lamps, and Gruner takes Anaris to the balcony to force her to sing. When the wind accidentally extinguishes some of the lamps by the door, the creatures seize the opportunity to enter the lighthouse and attack. As Friend fights his way upstairs shooting at them, Gruner tries unsuccessfully to detonate the dynamite. He has to defend himself as best he can until Friend manages to reconnect the wires to the detonator. Once he finishes, the lever is pulled and the farther line of dynamite explodes, effectively destroying most of the creatures. Excited by this, Gruner pulls the lever again, ignoring Friend's warnings, and activates the closer line of dynamite, knocking both of them unconscious. In the morning, they go out to assess the damage. Gruner finishes off any creatures that might still be alive, but Friend cannot do it when he discovers a bone necklace on one of the creatures, a sign of intelligence. Gruner throws the necklace into the water. That night, the creatures do not come, but the 2 men hear the sad sounds Anaris is making somewhere along the beach. Gruner explains that he found her that way when she was a baby, crying while trapped in a net. He also says she always does the same thing. She cries a lot, but in the end she always comes back anyway. Friend believes she is mourning. The next day, while walking along the beach, Friend notices 2 juvenile creatures in the sea. Trying to be friendly, he prepares something for them, a circle of stones in the sand and the small whalebone boat he carved placed in the middle. Then he returns to the lighthouse, where Gruner is reloading his rifles with blank cartridges, just to continue inspiring fear. Friend ignores him and goes up to the balcony, where he uses binoculars to check on his small bone boat. It is still there where he left it. The next morning, Friend finds Gruner drunk and passed out, with a deck of cards fallen on the floor. Inside the card box, he finds the same image of the woman he had seen in his cabin, but here she is not alone. Her husband is with her. The words love, love, love are also written on the back of this image. Friend then has a realization. Gruner is a false name, and the previous meteorologist did not die. Gruner is the previous meteorologist, driven mad by loss and isolation. Disturbed by this discovery, Friend decides to erase the day count he has been keeping on the wall. Later that day, while walking along the beach, Friend finds the stone circle empty. The creatures have taken the small bone boat. When he notices the juvenile creature in the distance, Friend leaves the torch he is carrying inside the stone circle before stepping back with his hands raised, showing that he does not want to cause harm. The young creature approaches him, and soon many others appear, including Anaris, who looks much more confident. The juvenile is about to give the bone boat back to Friend when Gruner interrupts the tender moment with a rifle shot. Friend tells him to back away because they were wrong. The creatures are actually friendly. Ignoring him, Gruner orders Anaris to return to the house, but she does not obey. Gruner becomes furious when he realizes that Anaris will not come back to him and runs back to the lighthouse, muttering things like, "No one leaves Gruner, Gruner leaves." Friend tries to befriend the creatures again, but the child collapses when a shot from Gruner, fired from the lighthouse balcony, hits him in the chest. All the creatures run back into the water, including Anaris, who lingers for just a second to exchange a look with Friend. Enraged, Friend returns to the lighthouse and attacks Gruner for what he has done, but Gruner gains the upper hand. When he is about to strike him with an axe, Friend uses his real name and says, "Aldor Vigeland is not a murderer." Stunned by these words, Gruner repeats, "Love, love, love," before opening the door and leaving the house, surrendering himself to the creatures. Friend watches them attack him and closes the door, knowing from the sounds that he has lost Gruner and that he is now alone. Time passes and we see 3 officers inside the lighthouse trying to wake Friend, who is sleeping in Gruner's old bed. They are there to replace Friend with the new meteorologist and believe that Friend is Gruner, but Friend does not correct them. In fact, he tells them that the meteorologist died of typhus. The officer in charge scolds him for the state of the room and informs him that they are at war, while Friend steps out onto the balcony, where he sees a large number of ships in the distance. The film ends with Anaris running along the beach before diving back into the water.